Samus, you have successfully destroyed the last remaining seed as detected by our systems. The spread of Phazon corruption has been stopped. However, there is one more mission to complete. Skytown's Aurora Unit 217 reports that it has discovered the origin of the Leviathan attacks. It appears that this is where Dark Samus and her main pirate force are stationed. Unfortunately, this location is so far away it cannot be reached by conventional space travel. We must instead create a wormhole to reach it. The pirates have constructed a Leviathan battleship, which is in orbit around this planet. Large energy surges consistent with a warp device are traveling between the pirates' planet and the Leviathan battleship. It appears the pirates are using this warp device to link to the ship. We will upload the coordinates of this device to you now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final episode of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. In the last episode, we took out Meta Ridley and the seed on the pirate homeworld. This episode, we are going to be, as 217 said there, we're going to be going through a wormhole to the planet of living Phazon, Phaaze, where, oh, what a clever name for it, where Dark Samus is located, and finished the fight that's taken us 3 games to do. So, we first need to take control of the Leviathan battleship. So, what we need to do is head over to the command station. First things first. Obviously map if you hadn't realised that already, Future Doctor. So here we have a usage for our fancy new Hyper Grapple. There's an organic mass here which appears resistant to normal attacks but could probably be overloaded with Phazon energy. Whatcha? There we go. And that is literally the only use of that in the normal game. But we get some tram stuff now. And so, a bit of a warning. Upcoming will be a point of no return. The game warns you about this very clearly. It says, once you do this, you will not be able to turn back. Do you want to do this? If you have not got 100% of the pickups, and you want 100% of the pickups, so if you haven't got that warning that says, well, that little message that says 100% of the pickups done, special ending unlocked, then go back and find stuff. The remaining pickups you are looking for are not ahead of you in the game, they are behind you. If you're still looking for things, obviously I've given a pretty complete, well, not a complete, pretty complete guide, a absolutely complete guide for it. But if you're still looking for any more, the 2 places to really check, obviously you've got the maps of everywhere, so you can check where you've still got little dots instead of crosses. The 2 places which don't appear on those maps are the GFS Valhalla and Brio Ice. If you're missing any pickups but can't find them anywhere on the map, those 2 places are the most likely locations they'll be found. Otherwise, scans don't matter for 100% officially, so as long as you've got 100% of items, like if you bring up the map and it says pickups 100 out of 100, you're fine. But if you haven't got any and you're thinking, oh, they might be ahead of you, they're not. So say no when you're offered that whole thing. Other than that, here we have got a shield, and I've forgotten the way past it. Oh, it's over here. There's some telluric alloy, which we can blow up with multiple bombs. And then there is a shield, which can be drained. And as you can see from this, it's... Oh, we walk at the same pace as it. That's unlikely. This is our transporter that leads to the Leviathan battleship. So, the Leviathan core, which we've destroyed 3 of so far, is weirdly giving us the side eye. I mean, it's only got 1 eye, so who knows? It's just giving us the eye full stop. Target appears to be a portion of the Leviathan's core, invulnerable to all weaponry. But then on the other hand, you have these Leviathan optical organs. Target appears to be sensitive to any type of weapon fire. By sensitive, it just means if you shoot it. Yeah, this ship's built into a living creature, and it's like, even considering what the Leviathans are, that they are just basically agents of corruption, They're like viruses. It's the whole thing of, like, a virus doesn't know what it's doing is good or bad. The virus spreads its own genetic code. That's all it can do. And the Leviathans and Phaaze itself are arguably a similar kind of thing to that. When you get sentient beings like the pirates and Dark Samus taking over that, it gets a bit more morally complex. But anyway, Control Terminal commands the Leviathan. Operate Terminal to gain control of the Leviathan. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, why did we get that pirate code on the Valhalla? If you haven't got that pirate code, you will not be able to take control of the Leviathan here. But we have got the pirate code, so I'll be taking this. Thank you very much.
Samus, we have received new data from AU-217. A planet was detected at the epicenter from where the Leviathan telemetry originated. We have named this planet Phaaze.
Technically you haven't named it Phaaze because it's called Phaaze in all of the pirate logs, which well predate this moment, but go on.
Samus, we have gained control of the Leviathan. Now we'll be able to open a wormhole and warp to Phaaze. It's time to end this. Once you rendezvous with the fleet, we'll head straight into the belly of the beast. I look forward to fighting alongside you again, Samus.
What do you mean alongside you again? That annoyed me when he was like last time he was like, I'll be on the ground with you, and he like hopped down, gave us a few words of encouragement, and then fucked off back into presumably the Olympus. And he's doing it again. He was like, I look forward to fighting alongside you. I was like, yeah, I suppose he is commanding a ship in a naval battle, so that is a bit more alongside us. Anyway, we need to walk the relatively long walk all the way back to our ship, so I will see you over there. So, this is, as discussed, the point of no return. When looking at the map, you'll have an option here for Planet Phaaze, which is actually pointing at the Olympus on the map. Once you select this, there is no going back. Make sure you're prepared.
Sir, Samus' ship has joined the fleet.
Thank you, Ensign. Leviathan Command, you are cleared to fire the portal beam. Once the wormhole is open, order all ships to enter.
Affirmative, Admiral. Message to all ships. Prepare for entry. Maintain battle formation timeless.
So, welcome to Phaaze, where energy tanks mean nothing. We vent all of them and we go into permanent hyper mode. Due to critical levels of internal Phazon corruption, the emergency vent override has been triggered by the PED suit. All acquired energy tanks have been vented to temporarily prevent total corruption. Hyper mode weapons no longer require the extinguishing of an energy tank to use. You are now permanently in hyper mode. Unfortunately, the vent override can no longer be used. Damage as well as exposure to Phazon's atmosphere will continue to raise your Phazon level. Your Phazon level is shown as a yellow bar at the top of this HUD. If this fills completely, you will die. So that's one of the quirks of Phaaze, is you can see it there, our level slowly building up. Expelling Phazon using the Phazon beam, or the hyper beam, does not make any difference to that level. There's only one way to lower it, or two ways to lower it, which I will go through. And this is Phaaze. It's so nice because it's not orange. This pulsating spores of this fungus emit the scent of decay. How would we know? We're wearing an environmentally sealed suit. But yes, it's so blue here. And I wonder if this is why the whole game is so orange. It's to make this a more dramatic moment. Massive tentacles grow from deep within the planet's surface. They appear semi-sentient. That's not encouraging. Crystallized Phazon has hardened over time but appears vulnerable to explosive blasts. Anything else kicking around? Oh, we've got these little fingery things. Species identified. Glow stem. Bioluminescent plant life that contains high radiation readings. We're on a planet made of sentient Phazon. Everything's going to contain high radiation readings. This is an actual logbook scan though. Low-level energy shield. Phazon-based weaponry can disrupt the shield, which is good because that's all we have. Few new enemies up ahead. We have gel sacks. Inflates as a defense measure, can explode and release venom. Were gel sacks? Oh, it was a gel zap I was thinking of. As you can see, enemies here can take quite a lot of Phazon, because you're permanently in hyper mode here. Hyper mode and Phazon-based weaponries aren't necessarily anything special on Phaaze in the same way that they are when you're on normal worlds. That little thing I connected, this isn't health. Technically it's Phazon, but it reduces your overall corruption level. This is your other way of reducing corruption. Put it into something. So using the hyper grapple to force Phazon into something else is the only way, other than collecting bits of those Phazon-y, crystal-y things, to reduce your Phazon level. Where are we? I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Kevin Alpha. Yes, this is where I should be. Wonderful. There are a few scans here. I want to make sure I don't miss. You know, these things here, Phazon tendrils will tangle around anything that gets too close, but can't grab smooth surfaces, which means mothball time. Also, just want to have a brief shout-out at this point to... Oh, well, actually, I'm going to scan some stuff first, and then I'll shout out. A cluster of large crystals has grown throughout the cavern wall, vulnerable to explosive blasts. And these are, I think, the things I actually want to scan, because they're the real scan here. Black Phazon crystals have hardened over time, vulnerable to heavy blasts. Don't know why they're a real logbook scan, but they're the one that remains in there, certainly. So these phasings, because you can hyper-grapple them, you can't hyper-grapple just any enemy, they're a very good way to reduce your corruption level. Be aware of that. They die after a couple of hyper beam shots anyway, but yeah, I want to give a shout out to YouTube user Sam Smith, who literally just dropped a comment on the episode of Metroid Prime that went live tonight, and I responded immediately saying, I responded to his actual comment and then said, I'm currently in the process of recording the final episode, so here I'm proving it, or I'm doing spooky time travel. I could have also recorded this later than the fact, but I'm not. So yes, that was a mildly interesting observance. Commenting on a very sensible comment, which is that the boss Helios is fucking weird, and he has no memory of him. I was the same. I've played this game a fair bit, 2 or 3 times fully through, and I just had literally zero memory of Helios at all. Now here's a weird one up ahead. Oh, nope. So these red things, we can destroy them. We've only seen them a couple of times in the game, but we have seen them before, and we destroy them with the Hyper Ball. But yeah, I was going to say, Helios was just a boss that I just barely... I didn't remember him at all when I fought it. It's so forgettable, for obvious reasons, because it's just it's not a garbage boss fight, it's just a bit low-level ass, to use the technical term. Anyway, this here is a Phazon puffer. It absorbs a load of Phazon from you, which is great, and then powers its own attacks. So you want to let it absorb some of your Phazon, and then kill it before it blast it back at you. That way you'll actually have a net loss of Phazon in the top meter from it. Whereas if you do it... If it attacks you, you'll end up taking more corruption than when you started. Here is really where the super duper chargey mode of the Phazon beam comes in handy. Obviously, you can't now quickly kill Phazon Metroids with the Nova Beam X-Ray Visor combo because you've not got the Nova Beam. You've got the X-Ray Visor. It works fine, but yes, technically that kills them in a couple of shots, but I think the Phazon Beam just does that anyway. Yeah, so it's not really necessary to bring up the X-Ray Visor for that at all. Anyway, we now want to destroy that bit over there, and we can, oh no, we can screw over that. And I like the fact that when you're in phase as well, because of how terribly corrupted we are, even your bloody screw attack is blue now. And it does, I don't know if it's necessarily the entire reason for it, but certainly I think it's a believable reason for why the whole game is so orange, is the fact that it makes phase at the end feel like a really alien place. Like, I've heard stories. There's a whole thing of, have you ever done one of those weird optical illusions where you stare at a negative image for a long time? It's often a picture of like Jesus or something like that, but it's in like negative, like it'll be like red and white, and then you, after staring at it for about like 30 seconds or something like that, you stare at a piece of white wall, and Jesus appears on it in like positive because the negative is kind of flipped around. It might be kind of like that, where it's like you've literally been playing this game so long, your brain's expecting brownish, reddish, yellowy colours, and then when the kind of bright blues of phase hit you, you're literally like, whoa, and your brain sees it as really weird. I don't know. Though I am looking forward to the bonus episode in which we analyse the colours of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. But that's certainly part of my theory. Oh, by the way, there's a scan here which we actually want to make sure we get. One of the advantages of being permanently in hyper mode is that, when did I start saying that when I knew I was about to do a scan? Tangleweed becomes agitated upon contact, retracts into the ground if threatened. We've seen some variants of that in almost every, well, literally in every Prime game. Oh, let's kill that puffer as well. Now he's oh, no. Come on, kill him. I'm not close enough to him. Oh, actually, I got him just before he does his attack in. Wonderful. Oh, no. Nonsense. Get off me. Help. Oh yeah, I was trying to do bombs, I remember I can't do bombs at the moment, I can only do hyperball. That's the thing, because we're constantly in hyper mode, we can't do multiple bombs. Well, that was bizarre. More has been destroyed. Fleshy mass appears to be part of a much larger organism. Encouraging! But yes, I've talked about before how hyper missiles aren't particularly useful, but when you're on phase, they are very useful, because the fact that they're faster, it's like, before it's like they're faster, but they use that's not what I expected that to do. How do I get this membrane to do anything? Well, oh, that's out of scanning range. Oh no, I got something on my face. Get the fuck off me. There we go. At least, yeah, you don't use up or generate any Phazon from your attack, so it's like you can just use things like Hyperball a lot, and Metroids aren't really a threat. Hundreds of juvenile Metroids. Wonderful. It's implying this place is actually a source of Metroids, which goes against some of the established Metroid canon as I understand it, but I guess Phazon Metroids could be like the progenitor, but I always heard that they were created by the Chozo. I'm going to use Hyperball to take these out. Basically, you need to damage this eye, and you can only damage the eye when it pops out, but if you sit next to it and just hold the Hyperball, whenever it pops out, you'll do some damage to it, so it tends to be a fairly reliable way of taking it out. There we go. But yeah, the Hyper Missiles are actually very useful here. Oh, sorry. Yeah, like under normal conditions, hyper missiles aren't incredibly useful because while they do deal a lot of damage, they drain quite a lot of Phazon, so they deal about as much damage as the same amount of Phazon's worth of hyper beams. Whereas here, because nothing uses any Phazon up, the only thing that limits you with hyper missiles is just the amount of missiles you have, and obviously we're still on full missiles. So hyper missiles are very useful for quickly laying down damage. In some ways, though, the fully charged hyper beam is just so much more powerful. Ah, brilliant, healing. And that is exactly what you need to use phasings for. They are basically the only reliable way of healing. I believe, I've not had this confirmed anywhere, but by looking at footage of other people who've got this far in the game, I believe the amount you've got until your hyper mode bar is completely filled is proportional to how many energy tanks you've got, which is why ours hasn't really filled beyond like a third or a quarter at best. Oh no, hideous bastard. So this thing, well, it's grabbed us certainly. you just need to wail on it till it lets you go. If we scan it, it doesn't even have a name. But why would it? Because we're the first people we assume to visit this. Bioform species, unknown. Mouth interior appears vulnerable. Damage it to loosen its grip. It's got a mouth like a Metroid hatcher, kind of. I wonder if anything shows up in the X-ray visor. It does not. But either way, it dropped us. I guess that was what that tentacle from earlier was attached to. Oh, more Metroids. Brilliant. It is fun using that. It's a shame that this game, and to a certain extent, I suppose, well, Metroid Prime 2, like Echoes, also just didn't have any like flamethrower style weapons like this one where you could just go blah 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 blah. Because you had the flamethrower and you had the wave buster in the first game that could do that, and they were both so much fun. And this one's just fun as well. Welcome to something odd. So there's a fair few things to see around here. If we scan this thing, though, this is the most important thing. This is the serpentine organ. This serves as a Leviathan womb. Tissue on the sides looks like it can be torn off. So now we get a kind of, I don't want to call it a mini-boss fight because it's just really weird. But if we grapple that off, we'll see inside there's a little thing swimming around. And it is possible to scan that little thing, and you indeed need to. But it's not easy to scan because it's tiny in a massive thing that's also scannable. But there we go. Leviathan infant. A Leviathan in early stages of development. Phazon within is highly unstable. And this is worth reading up on, because this gives you a nice background on the Leviathan. God knows how Samus's logbook knows this, but hey. Leviathans are the children of Phaaze. They are bioforms that begin life deep within the planet, inside the base of a serpentine organ that serves as a womb. The Leviathan will remain in here, feeding on an endless supply of Phazon until it has developed its Phazon core. The developed core marks the Leviathan's transition into adolescence and its departure from the womb. The serpentine organ moves the adolescent's form deep inside Phaaze and releases it closer to the planet's surface. Here, the bioform will continue to grow and mature beneath its older siblings. As time passes and the older ones are launched into space, the Leviathan will slowly make its way to the planet's surface. It is here the Leviathan will reach full majority. Once Phaaze has located a planetary target to corrupt, it will launch its Leviathan into space. The Leviathan is capable of interstellar travel, creating wormholes in space to expedite its journey. Instinctively, it homes in on its planetary target. Shortly after impact, the bioform dies, leaving its armoured shell to protect the Phazon core. Before it dies, the bioform often attracts and enthralls a large local predator. These are your guardians that we fought 3 of so far. Mogadar, Helios, and Omega Ridley. After mutating it through intense Phazon exposure, it compels the creature to protect the core. The core begins to seep into the planet, replacing the local ecosystem with one based on Phazon. And I think that's really interesting, it shows really nicely how the whole Phazon corruption-like process works. That it really is like, these things take, presumably based on the description, ages to mature, and it just fires out one world at a time, slowly corrupts that world, and switches it from a standard biological ecosystem to a Phazon-based one, and then just that process repeats, presumably over an incredibly long time scale, and it's a different style of ecosystem, and I think it's really interesting. Unfortunately, yes, the Leviathan Infant is a mini-boss fight of sorts. It's swimming around in here, and I'm hitting it with the fully charged blast, and it takes a hell of a lot of damage, probably more than any other enemy in the game, I'd be willing to say. While you're fighting it, so there's gas on the floor, which will cause you to go hyper, which is frustrating. Well, not go hyper, but will deal you, like, I guess, Phazon damage, do we call it at this point? I don't know. And there'll be a pretty constant stream of these bastards coming at you. These things can do you a bit of damage, they're more just to piss you off more than anything else. But as you can see, the Leviathan Infant moves around and it's fucked off to the other side now. If you kill, it's pretty easy to remain in net being fine here, because if you kill these things enough, they'll always drop Phazon when they die, and it's usually enough to very much kind of keep you alive. But this is a slog, because this is kind of the final step before the end of the game, really. And even, yeah, using that full blast is like, we've yet to come across really a non-boss enemy that can just take that much Phazon and not die, and yet this one does it time and time again, and that's an interesting thing in the war, which we're going to talk about after I've killed this thing. You know what, fuck it, let's talk about it now! Oh, get off my face, you bastard. Right, come on, come at you. Come at you, come at me. Right, let's do a bit of scanning. So, this thing here should look familiar to anyone who's watched the earlier series. These husks are identical to the bioform you encountered within the crater on Talon 4. Indeed, they're all around this place, embedded in the wall, and they very much do look like the basic form of Metroid Prime. And being as though Metroids are here, it's the game is never really clear on this, and there's a lot of confusion about where do Metroids come from, and it's made more problematic by the fact that Metroid Prime itself, as in the game, does not have a definitively established canon, because there were a couple of versions. There was the NTSC version, there was the Trilogy version, and there was the PAL version, and all have a slightly different story as to where Metroid Prime came from. In the NTSC version, it was absolutely an experiment by the Space Pirates in exposing Metroids to Phazon and then equipping them with advanced weapon systems. One of them then found their way inside the artifact crater somehow. That's not made clear. And then from there, mutated into Metroid Prime. Oh, fuck, that's... Yeah, you see how much nastiness you get out of that gas. Being in there for any period of time is real bad. And we are not looking great for corruption. We'll be fine, but that's not ideal at the moment. Quite frankly, yeah, that's what you really want to stay out of at all costs. These little Phazon bits will keep me going, and basically, if I just kill all the Metroids here, I'll be absolutely fine. But you can just see how much the bloody Leviathan womb takes to die. Well, not the Leviathan womb, the Leviathan infant. Get away from me. Oh, no, not in the gas. Oh, yeah, jump whenever you're down here, because the longer you're in that gas, the worse of a time you are going to have, quite frankly. Is he fucked off to the other side already? Jesus Christ. It's just such a mess, this fight, and it's weird because it just doesn't necessarily even feel like... You might not even realise you're in a boss fight, but you are. But yeah, the generally established canon, the generally accepted canon, as it's never been established, there we go, is that... Oh, let's heal up a bit. Is that Metroid Prime was a Talon 4 Metroid, which was then taken in as that Leviathan's kind of guardian, as we've seen so far, and was mutated into Metroid Prime. Why you've got the same here and why you've got Metroids here, it doesn't hugely add up, and it's a little bit complicated, and I'll talk about it a bit more in the bonus episode. For now, well, we're almost ready to head down, but I just kind of want to finish this point. Yeah, it's the game's got two kind of continuities which don't necessarily match each other, because here, Metroids live on Phaaze, and it's the idea was one transported with it, or was a local Talon one taken? If so, why are these things here? Or is this just what a Metroid becomes when exposed to Phazon, be it a Phaaze Metroid or a regular Talon Metroid? Unclear. Anyway, hope we're ready. Here's where Dark Samus is, underused for the entire game. Dark Samus, Phazon-based energy entity, disrupted by hypermode attacks. Target is composed of pure Phazon energy and highly unstable. Scans indicate that hypermode attacks are capable of disrupting her, likely a result of hypermode being energized by Samus's body. Dark Samus is capable of generating echoes. Hey, that's the name of the game. The other game, of herself to aid her in battle. These units will be used as increased firepower and act as distractions while she replenishes her energy. They should be destroyed immediately. She is capable of absorbing Phazon from Phaaze to replenish her own. So she moves around here, and one of the best ways of taking her on, as I've been saying kind of this entire time, is to use the fully charged Hyper Beam. So charge it until it does its final bit of animation. So there. Takes 2 seconds or so, but if you look at how much damage we've done to her already, it's incredibly useful. Here we go. So she starts absorbing Phazon to heal herself. A nice fully charged blast of the Hyper Beam again is usually enough to stop her from doing that. There we go. And we continue. Yes, she's been... One of my always slight concerns with this game is that Dark Samus is absent, basically, for almost all of the game. Like, you don't see her at all. You hear about her and you hear about the pirates, but... Okay, that was quite cool with the music. The real one can be identified by the X-ray visor. So just target that and keep on blasting. But yeah, to say, like, one of the things I quite liked about Echoes is the fact, so you can't target her here, but what you can do, they're all healing, but you need to disrupt the real one, so that basically means find the real one again with the X-ray visor and blast on it. Yeah, I really liked in Echoes the fact that you do fight her relatively frequently. Here, so you can't target her here, but I would recommend, again, using the highly charged beam and just kind of try and target her manually, like, without L-targeting, literally just, like, painting her by, like, pointing at her. You'll do as much damage as by any other means, and then eventually she'll stop and you'll have a chance to target her again properly. But yeah, I really like the fact in Echoes that you fought Dark Samus all the time. So here, basically it's slightly grayed out the visor, which means you'll find which means that she's the only real one there again, so you don't need the X-ray visor. And now she's spooked up again, so we're even targeting the right one anyway. Yeah, I liked the fact that in Echoes you fought her all the time and she was like the recurring villain, whereas in this she's the overarching villain, but you have like nothing to do with her other than this final battle here, and it just feels like she was perhaps a little wasted as a villain, because she's just not a character in this. I really like the fact that she didn't have a huge amount of necessarily personality in Echoes, but you also, from like seeing her time and time again, you really got the impression she was bloody losing it towards the end of that game, whereas here she's just, you only see the effects of her actions rather than actually anything that she's really up to, which I always thought was a bit of a shame. This fight's kind of cool, but it's also a bit kind of easy, as in it's technically time consuming, but it's just, you just end up doing the same thing if it's just fire a fully charged blast from the old hyper beam, and then just, well, I guess just continue doing that, really. Obviously, we're taking damage as Phazon, and I guess because it is proportional to how many energy tanks we've got, we've got so much to take that it's just, we don't have to worry about becoming, like, fully corrupted. I think we're pretty much fine. But it's an odd boss fight, and it's like, I'm always torn about the type of boss fights I prefer in games. Depending on how well it's done, sometimes I really like the ones that are like, you need to defend and wait for your chance to strike, and then, well, we'll see in a second. So, introducing the real final boss, the incredibly heavily corrupted Aurora Unit 313. Hatch on its head protects the core, damage the core to sever cables. 313 has somehow been fused with the bioessence of Dark Samus. While combat shields protect most of the unit, a weak spot has been detected at the cable junction. Damaging the unit's core will expose this point, but the core itself has been protected by an armoured hatch. Tentacle ports can be damaged to initiate stunning cerebral feedback pulses within the target. While incapacitated, the hatch will be unprotected and able to be pulled open. This unit has been heavily mutated by Phazon exposure. It appears to be symbiotically connected to Phaaze as well. I mean, that's why they stole the Aurora unit in the first place, was basically to, in order to have better control over Phaaze. What we want to do here is, yeah, those tentacles that stick out are our goal. You wait for them to pop out, and then you shoot the ends of them, and then that flashes yellow. While it's yellow, hit it with a hyper beam, and it'll fall down. At this point, we need to get in close to it, because we need to grapple that top off. And when you do so, there's your weak point there. So charge up a beam, and then blast it into their full beams. And as you can see, we've done about half its health there. It's incredibly powerful, the hyper beam. It's like, even when you're forced into hyper beam, into hyper mode, the hyper mode is still overpowered, which is ridiculous. But yes, this is the other type of battle that I was literally just talking about. The Dark Samus one is, you can just constantly wail on the enemy, without really needing to put much thought into it. You do a bit of dodging, but you're also, like, she's constantly open for attacks, whereas this is the opposite. This is the one where it's like, you've got to dodge attacks, wait for the right time, and then fire on like a specific weak point. And I think these often make more interesting and more dynamic battles, depending on the type of attacks you're facing. If it is just like literally all the attacks are easy to dodge, you just wait, and you're literally just waiting easily for your one moment. Oh, she's firing like mortar stuff here. If you just keep sidestepping, you avoid them. Yeah, if they're easy to dodge or don't do much damage, then it just means you are literally just waiting for your moment to attack. And these can be easy, I think. Compared to the other two Prime games, even from my perspective of Let's Playing it, which is having 100% of all pickups at the time of final bosses, this is an easy game relative to the other Prime games. Like, there's no denying it, really, in terms of how much hand-holding it gives you, how much... Oh, spooky Dark Samus is... Yeah, for how much hand-holding it gives you, how easy it is relatively to, like, find pickups, how easy it is to actually get 100% in this, and how easy the combat is. Like, Hyper Mode makes the combat incredibly easy, so there's no denying this is an easier game. I think that's it stunned now, and this should be enough to take it down, rip its head off, and then charge up the old super-duper Hyper Blast, and BAM! No, of course it's not that easy. Aurora Unit Head, the final one. I believe this is... I don't know if this is actually a scan or not. Who knows whether I'll count it or not? If that is a scan, it's our final scan in the game. Aurora Unit 313. Severed cable has exposed a weak point that is vulnerable to attack. Yeah, if you read this, you'll see it's actually the same entry, which means we should actually be able to check. Great time to do this. Check the logbook and see that we've got 100% of everything. Great time to do it. Look at that. Creatures, all of them. Brilliant. Research. Everything, no question marks in there, and lore, everything. Wonderful! We have all of the scans. It'll tell us that later, don't worry. Here we basically got to get the weak point they see is behind it. So depending on what position it's in, it becomes possible to attack it or not. While it's doing this attack, you can just kind of get behind it naturally and blast into that weak point a bit. Again, the machine gun is your most useful thing. As I say, with all the tanks we've got, we've been about half corrupted most of this time, so it's like... If we had half the energy tanks in the game or less, we might be having a bit of a rough time right now. But obviously we didn't, so we're okay. Got that module at the bottom, so... Oh, balls. I was going to say blast that as hard as possible, but I did not. There we go. And that will actually full stun it, which lets you circle around while charging a Hyper Blast, of course, and there we go. Do a good amount of damage to it again. It does that shot there, which basically also stuns it just from the sheer force of expelling that shot, which again lets you get a nice bit of Hyper Blast into the back, which I completely cocked up. Now it's doing the lasery one, where you can kind of get behind it. This one is perhaps not the best to do the machine gun shot on, because you want to try and get what little shots you can in when you can. And here it's just going around like a bloody lunatic, so... Here, all your efforts should just really go into not being slammed in the face by it. And yet, here we are. Right, what are you going to do next, son? We've kind of seen all his attacks, which is quite nice. There you go, it's the module on the bottom. Get rid of that. Can I get behind it at this point? Kind of. There we go. Oh, that did a meaty amount of damage to it. It is satisfying seeing its thing go down. Oh, brilliant. It's doing this one again. And we got stun in, so this should be time to finish it. 3, 2, 1, wallop!
We have confirmed unstable energy spikes in multiple locations on the planet. It's a chain reaction. It's accelerating. The planet's going to explode!
Order the fleet to disengage and prepare to retreat. Activate the Leviathan's warp field. Get us out of here!
Damage reports coming in. We've lost 37% of the fleet. Half of the surviving ships are reporting heavy casualties.
Sir, we've confirmed the wormhole has disappeared. All the Leviathans are gone. The crisis is over.
What about Samus?
Negative, sir. No contact.
Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Samus's ship.
Well, there's what you get for 75%. A cutscene which is... I feel like it's lower frame rate than the rest of the game. It's certainly lower resolution. It's been poorly upscaled. Has music in areas that already exist in the game and recycles a load of footage of Samus feeling bad for killing her friends. Not the best thing, but we still got to see the 100% one upcoming. But that is the end of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. We also have made an unusual record with this. This has not been a huge series. It's been 22 episodes, so it's about mid-range for me. But tonight has been the single biggest recording session I have ever done, be that single player or multiplayer. The current time it's standing at the moment is 4 hours 45 minutes, and I've still got the credits to go. So I started... Oh, by the way, this is the title music for Metroid Prime Corruption, which is really nice, and you never hear it in the Trilogy version, because the Trilogy version doesn't have a title screen, it just has the Trilogy one, and it goes straight into that. And it's really quite nice. But... yeah, no, I started recording tonight at the episode where we got the spider paw, and I've been going ever since. So, there we go. I like to record in big chunks, so there's that. So that was Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. It's, as a lot of people have commented, it's a very different game to the other Prime games. It tried to move towards being more kind of plot-oriented and being a bit more kind of active and less about the exploration and the isolation than the Prime games. It did do that, I feel. And it did it well, but in doing so, it did become a different game. I think it worked, but created a game that's got quite a different feel. It's a nice conclusion to the trilogy, I think, narratively speaking, because it's like Metroid 1 and Prime 2 almost stand alone. They deal with the same kind of stuff with the Phazon, but not hugely. It's dealt with more in...
Planet Phaaze. Samus Aran's arduous fight against Phazon has ended. However, in the vast regions of space, this victory is just a twinkle of a star, spreading the light of hope through the darkness.
Perfect point about me talking about concluding the trilogy, because the one starts with, in the vast dark... the first one, at least the PAL version, starts with, in the vast darkness of space, the light of a single individual doesn't shine much, but there is one light that does, the light of Samus Aran, and that kind of ties that together a little bit. So I think narrative-wise it really does bring all the Phazon stuff to a head and make it feel quite weighty and impactful, as well as any Nintendo game of this era that's not traditionally heavily plot-focused did. And it was nice to have the budget with this game. Like, a lot of the visual stuff did look quite cool. It was cool to use the gunship and move that around and things like that, but And the music was decent, as good as any of the other games. Nah, not quite as good as Prime 1, but as good as Echoes, I thought. All I would say is, yeah, various things did make this game easy. Like, it was the collectibles were easy, the hyper mode made the combat incredibly easy. So there is that. It's not necessarily like I'm not a person who hugely plays games for difficulty, but it felt like in this one you were never challenged. It was just like if you were at all challenged, hold plus, slap on hyper mode, you're absolutely fine. So there is that. But generally, it's an enjoyable enough game. It has a lot of. It feels more different to the other two than does Prime 2, and a lot of people gave Prime 2 shit for being basically like a essentially DLC for Prime 1, and it does feel that way sometimes. Whereas this does feel like a different game. It's the same core, it's the same first-person shooter experience. While being explorative, it's not a true first-person shooter. That's always the interesting thing about the Prime games. They are not, despite the fact they involve shooting and first-person perspective, they're not first-person shooters really. They are more about the exploration and the environmental stuff. This one, I think, while it has nice bits of music and stuff like that, it doesn't have some of the beautiful environments that the first two have. It feels a bit more orange, if nothing else. And we'll talk about that. You know what? Well, let's talk now about what's coming next. Well, first off, there's the bonus episode. It's not first off, but first on the list, I suppose. So in the bonus episode, we're going to talk about some of the concept art that it gives me here, some of the series overview of kind of what story spans all three games, and the weird discontinuities I talked about earlier. And we're going to do a formal scientific analysis of the colour of Metroid Prime 3, and the preliminary results I have at the moment are very interesting. Unsurprising, but interesting. Time for our 100% bonus. Interesting. We'll talk about that in the bonus episodes about what exactly that means. But yes, mission final, and we got how many percent? Difficulty normal, percentage complete, 100%. There we go, in 7.5 hours. That's not true. Wait, 7.5 hours would mean at 3 minutes per. Actually, that would roughly work out. Except it was 22 episodes of 20 minutes with all the crap edited out. It definitely somehow dials down these estimates. I don't know how, but hey, there we go. So what else is next? Let's talk about that. So I have an project. It's 4 episodes. It's a game called Kororimpa. I don't know if anyone ever played it, but it's basically like a kind of monkey ball thing which you manipulate using the Wii remote. I recorded it this afternoon, and it's entertaining enough, which means including this one that's been nearly 5 hours, and plus that was 2 hours this afternoon, I've been recording videos for 7 hours today. Lockdown! Excellent for making you lose your damn mind. Coming after that, though, wow, first off, I want to show something, because this is really nice to see. And I will talk about this in the bonus episode, but it's really nice to see now as well. If I look at my main file on this, Metroid Prime 1, 100%. Metroid Prime 2, 100%. Metroid Prime 3, 100%. We have 100%ed the Metroid Prime trilogy, and that's pretty cool, I think. And I'll rub that in a little bit more in the bonus episode. But what's coming up next, the next major game I'm doing? Well, this is something I wanted to do since I started the channel. It is, by a lot of measures, I would say my favourite game. It's hard to pick a favourite game because I like so many different games, so many different things, but this one wins at a lot of categories. I've wanted to do it forever on the channel, but I've been worried about doing it for 2 reasons. Number one, I wanted to get it right. I wanted to get the feel of it right. I wanted to get the narrative structure of it right. I wanted to get it right as a piece of gameplay showing off as well, of getting everything in the right order and feeling right, and I feel I'm now at the level where I can do that, kind of editing and putting it all together wise. The other reason is it's a very personal game for me, and I'll really go into the reasons why that when I'm playing it. It is, for want of a better phrase, it's associated with a... I love it, and I've always loved it since I played it as a kid, but it's of late... say of late, this was about 5 years ago. It was associated. It became quite closely associated with a personal trauma, let's call it that. And as such, I've not been able to actually play it since then. And I only now feel like I'm ready to kind of tackle it again and deal with a lot of that. And so it's going to end up being a perhaps very personal series. That may appeal to you, that may not, but that's kind of why I've been putting off doing it for a while, but I feel I'm ready to tackle it for that as well. Long viewers of the series might know what game of my channel might know what game I'm referring to already, but for those who don't, I've made a little trailer. There is an official trailer for this game made by Nintendo, and it's fucking awful. I made my own. Enjoy it here. Thank you very much, and I hope you'll join me for what comes next.